The Hidden Life of Trees, by Peter Wohlleben. Introduction. Have you ever walked through a forest and felt a sense of peace, a quiet stillness that seems almost ancient? There's a story I want to share with you, a discovery made by a forester named Peter Wohlleben in an old beech forest in Germany. For years, he'd walked past a strange patch of mossy green stones. They were arranged in a circle, and he never gave them much thought. But one day, something made him stop. He bent down, lifted the moss on one of the stones, and underneath, he found bark. These weren't stones at all. They were the gnarled remains of an enormous, ancient tree stump. The inside had rotted away centuries ago, meaning the tree was felled at least 400 or 500 years earlier. But when he scraped the bark with his pocket knife, he found a greenish layer underneath. Chlorophyll. The color of life. This stump was still alive. How? A stump has no leaves. Without leaves, there's no photosynthesis, no sugar, no food. No living thing can fast for centuries. It was impossible. And yet, there it was. The only explanation was that the surrounding beech trees, the living, breathing giants of the forest, were keeping it alive. They were pumping sugar and nutrients through their roots, connected through an underground network, to nourish this ancient member of their family. They were refusing to let it die. This single discovery opens up a world that most of us have never seen. A world where trees are not just solitary, silent pillars of wood, but deeply social beings. This is the world brought to us by Peter Wohlleben in his groundbreaking book, The Hidden Life of Trees. Wohlleben isn't just a scientist, he's a forester who spent decades managing trees for commercial profit, seeing them as lumber. But over time, by slowing down and simply observing, he began to see something else entirely. He saw a community. This book became a global phenomenon, selling millions of copies, because it taps into a fundamental truth we feel but rarely understand. By the end of our time together today, you won't just see a collection of trees when you look at a forest. You will see a family. A bustling, communicating, and deeply connected society. You will see that the forest is, in fact, a superorganism, and you will never walk among the trees the same way again. Book summary. To truly understand the world Peter Wohlleben reveals, we have to start where he did, underground. We tend to think of trees as individuals, competing for sunlight and space. But the real story, the one that governs the life of the forest, is happening in the dark, in a sprawling, intricate network of roots and fungi. Imagine an internet made of living tissue, a wood-wide web that connects every tree in a forest. This isn't just a metaphor, it's a physical reality. Trees of the same species are often connected directly through their root systems. But the true masters of this network are fungi. Their tiny, thread-like filaments, called mycelium, weave through the soil in unbelievable density. A single teaspoon of forest soil can contain miles of these fungal threads. Over centuries, a single fungus can grow to cover many square miles, connecting an entire forest. This network isn't just a passive structure. It's a bustling information highway. Through it, trees share life-giving resources. A tree that has an abundance of sugar, perhaps because it's in a sunny spot, will send some to a neighbor who is struggling in the shade. They share water in times of drought. But even more astonishingly, they send messages. When a tree is attacked by insects, it doesn't just suffer in silence. It sends out distress signals. One way is through the air, by releasing chemical scents. On the African savanna, when a giraffe starts munching on an acacia tree, the tree releases a gas called ethylene. Neighboring acacias smell this warning and, within minutes, start pumping toxins into their own leaves to make them unpalatable. The giraffes, wise to this, will often skip the nearby trees and move 100 yards away, or walk upwind, to find trees that haven't yet received the warning message. Our forests have the same system. When a caterpillar bites a leaf, the tree sends out electrical signals, much like our own nervous system, though they travel much, much more slowly. It can take an hour for defensive compounds to reach the damaged leaf. But through the air, the warning is faster. And the messages can be incredibly specific. The tree can identify the exact species of insect by the chemical signature of its saliva. It then releases a precise pheromone that acts like a flare, summoning specific predators that love to eat that particular insect. Elms and pines, for instance, can call in tiny parasitic wasps that lay their eggs inside leaf-eating caterpillars, saving the tree from further harm. But what about the trees that are too far away to receive the airborne message? This is where the Wood Wide Web comes in. Drive. Suzanne Simard, a forest scientist who pioneered this research, discovered that trees also send these chemical warnings through the fungal network. They even send electrical impulses along the fungal threads, traveling at about 1/3 of an inch per second. Once the news is broadcast, all the connected trees in the area can prepare their defenses. This communication network explains why a forest is so much more than just a collection of trees. It's a community. A single tree is not a forest. On its own, it's vulnerable to wind, weather, and attack. But together, a forest creates its own microclimate. It moderates temperature, stores vast amounts of water, and generates humidity. In this protected environment, trees can live to be very old. And to ensure the community remains intact, they look after each other. They support the sick and the weak. The strong help the weak, knowing that one day, they might be the one in need of assistance. This social security system is on full display in undisturbed beech forests. Researchers found something astounding there. You would expect every tree to photosynthesize at a different rate depending on its access to light, water, and soil nutrients. But they found that all the beech trees in the stand were photosynthesizing at the same rate. The strong were equalizing the differences with the weak. Through the root network, those with an abundance of sugar were sharing it with those who were running short. It's a system designed to ensure that no individual falls too far behind. Because every tree is valuable to the community. This is why, in a natural forest, you'll see trees growing very close together, sometimes just a few feet apart. Foresters used to think this was bad, that they were competing. So they would thin the forest, cutting down competitors to give the remaining trees more space. But this act of helping actually hurts them. It isolates them. They send out messages to their neighbors, but only receive silence from the stumps left behind. Left on their own, some trees may grow faster for a while, but they don't live as long. A tree can only be as strong as the forest that surrounds it. This brings us to one of the most beautiful and profound ideas in the book, the concept of tree parenting. The tall dominant trees in a forest are often called mother trees. They are the central hubs of the underground network, connected to hundreds of other trees. And they are especially connected to their own offspring, the young saplings growing at their feet. For a young tree, life begins as a lottery. A single beech tree can produce around 1.8 million seeds in its 400-year lifetime. Of those millions, statistically, only one will grow to become a full-grown tree. The rest will be eaten by animals or become humus. The lucky seed that sprouts finds itself in a difficult position. It's living in the deep shade of its mother's crown, where only about 3% of the sunlight reaches the forest floor. With so little light, a sapling can't grow quickly. It produces just enough sugar to keep itself alive, but not enough to grow tall. And this, Wohlleben explains, is not a disadvantage. It's an education. The mother tree is intentionally keeping her child in the shade, forcing it to grow incredibly slowly. Why? Because slow growth in youth is the secret to a long and healthy life for a tree. A tree that shoots up quickly has large wood cells with a lot of air in them, making it weak, brittle, and susceptible to fungi. But a tree that grows slowly for its first century or two develops tiny, dense wood cells. This makes it flexible, resilient to storms, and highly resistant to disease. This long, slow childhood isn't a period of suffering. The mother tree is in constant contact with her child through the root network, nursing it. She sends it a steady supply of sugar and nutrients to keep it alive while it waits patiently for its moment in the sun. A young beech tree that is only a few feet tall might already be 80 or 100 years old. It can wait for another 200 years in this state of patient education. Then, one day, the time comes. The mother tree reaches the end of her life. Perhaps she succumbs to a storm or illness and comes crashing down. A gap opens in the canopy. Sunlight floods the forest floor. For the young trees that have been waiting for centuries, this is the green light. Now, a race begins. All the youngsters shoot upward, straight as an arrow, towards the sky. Those that grow fastest will claim the light, and those who dawdle will be left in the shade of their siblings and will eventually perish. But because of their slow, patient upbringing, they are now perfectly equipped for a long life. They have learned the most important lesson the forest has to teach: slowly does it. This slow, deliberate pace defines every aspect of a tree's life, even its love life. Deciduous trees like beeches and oaks don't bloom every year. They coordinate. They might wait 3, 4, or even 5 years. They do this to outsmart animals like wild boars and deer, who love to eat their nutritious acorns and beechnuts. If the trees produced a feast every year, the animal populations would boom and eat all the seeds. But by blooming irregularly, the trees keep the herbivore populations in check. Then, in what's called a mast year, all the trees in the forest bloom at once, producing such an enormous quantity of nuts that the animals can't possibly eat them all. This ensures that enough seeds will survive to sprout. For pollination, most forest trees like beeches, oaks, and conifers rely not on insects, but on the wind. It's more reliable, especially in cooler temperatures when bees stay home. They release massive clouds of pollen that drift through the forest. To avoid inbreeding, trees have developed clever strategies. Some, like spruce, have their male and female blossoms open a few days apart. Others, like the bird cherry, can chemically recognize their own pollen and block it from fertilizing the egg, ensuring only foreign genes are allowed to create the next generation. It's a remarkable feat of self-awareness. As a tree grows from a patient seedling to a mature giant, it must follow the unwritten rules of forest etiquette. The ideal tree has a ramrod-straight trunk and a symmetrical crown. This isn't about aesthetics, it's about stability. A tree must withstand wind, rain, and snow, forces that can exert the pressure of hundreds of tons. An evenly formed tree distributes this stress perfectly. A tree with a curved trunk or a V-shaped fork is structurally weak and will likely break apart in a storm. These nonconformists are weeded out by nature, leaving only the well-behaved, stable members to grow old. But even the strongest tree will get sick. And just like us, its state of health is often written on its skin, its bark. A tree's bark serves the same function as our skin. It protects the sensitive interior, holds in moisture, and keeps out pathogens. As a tree grows, its bark must expand. Some trees, like pines and oaks, develop deep fissures and wrinkles as they age. Others, like the beech, have smooth, silvery gray bark for most of their lives because they are constantly shedding and renewing their skin. But eventually, even the beech gets wrinkles, starting from the bottom up. When a tree is under stress, perhaps from a growth spurt to fill a gap in the canopy, it diverts energy from its defense systems. This is when pests strike. A healthy tree can usually fight off attackers by producing toxic compounds or sticky resin. but a weakened tree is a sitting duck. The first signs often appear at the very top of the crown, where the topmost branches begin to die. Even in death, however, a tree's service to the forest is far from over. It becomes a community housing project and a mothership of biodiversity. When a woodpecker drills a hole in a trunk, it's often just the beginning. The bird takes a break, allowing fungi to move in and soften the wood. The woodpecker then returns to easily enlarge the cavity. When the woodpecker family moves out, other tenants move in. Nuthatches might make the entrance smaller with mud to protect their brood. Owls might take over once the cavity is rotted and expanded. Bats use a series of tree cavities to raise their young, moving every few days to escape parasites. The hollowed-out, rotting trunk becomes a universe of its own. Wood ants chew the moldy wood to build their nests. Beetle larvae spend years slowly developing inside. Their excrement, along with droppings from the owls and bats above, constantly enriches the rotting wood, feeding a whole new community of organisms. A fifth of all animal and plant species in a forest depend on dead wood. When the dead tree finally falls, it continues to serve. The crumbling trunk becomes a nurse log, a perfect, water-retentive cradle for young seedlings, especially spruce, to begin their lives. The dead wood recycles precious nutrients back into the soil, feeding the next generation. The cycle of life continues. Understanding this intricate web of life, communication, and community fundamentally changes our perspective. Wohlleben contrasts this natural forest life with the life of what he calls street kids, the trees planted in our cities and parks. These trees are often planted alone, far from their relatives. They are the orphans of the tree world. Without a mother to shade them, they grow too quickly in the full sun, developing weak, airy wood. Their roots are often damaged during planting, and they can never form the deep, stable networks of their forest counterparts. They grow up in compacted, nutrient-poor soil, surrounded by concrete that radiates heat. They are bombarded with exhaust fumes, road salt, and dog urine. They are pampered as saplings, but this care eventually stops. They live lives of chronic stress, unable to communicate or receive support from a community. It's no surprise that they are highly susceptible to pests and rarely live to a ripe old age. Their lonely, difficult lives are a stark testament to the profound importance of the forest community they are missing. Ultimately, Wohlleben invites us to see trees not as a commodity, but as beings with their own lives, needs, and even a form of consciousness. They operate on a different timescale than we do, one that we can barely comprehend. A 9,500-year-old spruce in Sweden has lived 115 times longer than the average human. In its roots, it holds the memory of millennia. When we rush through the forest, we see only a fraction of what is happening. We see static, silent objects. But if we slow down, if we learn to observe, we can begin to perceive the hidden life all around us. The dramas, the friendships, the love stories playing out in slow motion. The forest is not just a place, it's a living, breathing, feeling world. And by understanding it, we might just learn something profound about patience, community, and our own place within the grand, interconnected web of life. Commentary. What Peter Wohlleben has done with the hidden life of trees is something truly remarkable. He has given a voice to the silent giants that have stood around us for our entire lives. This book isn't just a collection of fascinating scientific facts, it's an invitation to shift our perspective, to move from seeing trees as objects to recognizing them as subjects, as living beings with agency, relationships, and a history. The most powerful lesson, for me, is the idea of the forest as a community. In our modern world, we often celebrate rugged individualism, the idea of forging your own path alone. But the forest teaches us a different lesson. It teaches that true strength, resilience, and longevity come from connection and mutual support. The trees that thrive are not the isolated loners, but the ones that are deeply integrated into the wood wide web, sharing resources, sending warnings, and nurturing the next generation. They demonstrate that the whole is truly greater than the sum of its parts. This book challenges the very way we practice forestry. For centuries, we have managed forests like factories, prioritizing quick growth and maximum yield. We've planted monocultures, thinned out competition, and removed dead wood, believing we were improving on nature. But Wohlleben shows us that in doing so, we have created weak, sick, and unstable ecosystems. We've raised generations of street kids instead of nurturing a healthy, functioning family. The wisdom of the forest is that slowness creates strength, diversity creates stability, and community creates resilience. So, how can we take these profound lessons and apply them to our own lives? It can start very simply. First, the next time you walk in a forest or even a park, I want you to slow down. Don't just walk through it, be in it. Find two trees growing close together. Look up at their canopies. Do their branches seem to be avoiding each other, giving each other space? Perhaps you're looking at a pair of old friends. Place your hand on the bark of an old tree. Think about the centuries it has stood there, the storms it has weathered, the life it has supported. Try to see the forest not as a landscape, but as a gathering of individuals with stories to tell. Second, develop a new appreciation for the street kids in your neighborhood. When you see a lone tree growing out of a tiny square of dirt in a sidewalk, don't just see a piece of urban decoration. See a survivor. See a being that is fighting incredible odds every single day, without the support system that its forest cousins take for granted. Recognize its silent strength. And finally, consider what it means to be part of a community in your own life. Who is in your network? Who do you support, and who supports you? The trees teach us that we are not meant to go it alone. We are stronger, healthier, and happier when we are connected, when we share our resources, and when we look out for the weakest among us. That was a summary of The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wohlleben. We've touched on some of the most beautiful ideas today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only ever be a map. The real treasure is found when you make the journey yourself. The magic of this book is in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or a simple observation connects with you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is here to help you decide if this book is worth your time and attention. If anything we've talked about today has sparked a sense of wonder in you, I encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning facts, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see the world around you. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this journey into the forest valuable, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next exploration of another life-changing book. Let's continue to learn and grow together.